at least. I mean, we have like separate models or modules concerns for like notable for notes, subscribable for like the subscribe button on issues where you could like subscribe to notifications. I think we have another one for like something that having to do's, and I think these can be used to compose an incident model, and which could reuse like a lot of the parts that we want to kind of already do with extensible issues. I looked through the extensible issues thing, Epic, and one thing I do note that this is the main difference of what we currently have and what the idea there is that in that Epic, we want users to be able to link those, right? I mean, they could add like issues to their own type or like so that links are in the database or something. Right now, it can't be done. We have to, include the class in the Ruby model. But I think it's good enough for incident management that we don't really like, need that, dynamic linking for now. For the existing widgets or like features at least, what I was thinking when we had this conversation with Jake was like we could do the dynamic linking or the more dynamic way of plugging into these models with the new widgets we add for incident management. But for the old ones, we could just compose it using the current tools that we have, these models, concerns, and I think even the notes thing is a view component that you could like reuse. I'm pretty sure there are like lots of gotchas there with like special if and else with if issue or something. But yeah, I guess we could like reuse those and figure those out. And that's what we did when we created Epics. And I think that was the last time we kind of like tested this, like plugging this thing into a new model. Epics have notes, and all those. But that was like a year or 2 years ago or something. But yeah.
So thanks, Heinrich. This is one of the reasons why I'm glad we're all here is specifically because of this. What happened with Epics, and I wasn't here when it was being built, but apparently that like it took 6 months, and then we were at a point where we started like duplicating a lot of functionality between issues and Epics, and then like because they were separate things, you had to maintain both. So like a good use case of where I see like waste in that process is like right now we're creating a new Epic creation form, which looks exactly like an issue creation form just with some different fields on it. But it's a separate, like I think it's a completely separate view app, separate everything, right? And then other little nuances are like people want to have assignees on Epics now, right? So like we can add that, which that's like the same thing that's on an issue. When we did the sort order on notes, right, we did it on issues and merge requests, but not on Epics. Like as we introduce a sticky header on merge requests, there's tabs, and on issues now there are like a title bar, and then on Epics it's like it's an even different thing. And so part of from a product standpoint, what I would like to solve with this is making it less likely that we'll diverge in certain places on user experience and on data, right? Or make it easier to have standard things or plug things in and not diverge so much from user experience. Because like it's even painful right now that we have a different sidebar on MRs than on issues than on Epics. And then if we create another thing like incidents and compose that based on all these like classes and models and controllers, we're gonna have another sidebar or like, and it's almost, how can we simplify all this stuff back down into one thing that we create, which is like an issuable, and then make it easy just to configure like a field or two if you need that, or like a different widget and that way a widget could be applied to any issuable. The group responsible for maintaining that issuable type wants it to be there. So like we develop there instead of duplicating efforts that have cascading effects for years. That's what I've seen. So
Yeah, I think it's mostly on the front end though, as we like switch from HAML to like, if you look at the edit form of an issue, it's actually different from the edit form of like a merge request. Like in an issue, it's like an inline JS thing where the description becomes a text area. On the merge request, it becomes like the old style where it loads a new page with the edit merge request page. And the back end, the data model is the same. It uses the same class. Yeah, so what I think is like, it's a good idea to make these new, whatever new features we're building for incident management, make it easily extensible, or not extensible, but easily pluggable into like whatever issuable object or model there is. So for example, we're building a like, was there like a Zoom widget for on the sidebar for the Zoom room or something for incidents. Since it's going to be a new widget, we now use this new framework for us to do widgets that can be easily linked to any issuable. So it could be easily added to an issue, merge request, Epic in the future if we wanted to. But for the old ones, I think we should like just compose it from the old things that we have, because we're not gonna get anything done if we're gonna wait for all those to be rewritten, right?
Yeah, so at the moment on the front end side of things, if you look at issues, the majority of that, like you said, is in HAML. With Epics, the majority of it has been done through Vue and Vuex, and now it seems like there's a good push for GraphQL as the initial base. So maybe we could look at building some against GraphQL where we can, and then leaning back onto the Vue that's already there for Epics, and kind of seeing if we can have some quick wins that way.
Yeah, sure. I think that's possible. And yeah, but I think my main concern is like the new widgets. Like, I think that's the only thing that we need to like design or plan right now. Like how we make this so that these are easily pluggable into like existing ones or new ones we want to create in the future, so that we don't have the same problem. But for the old ones, we need to find a way, an easy way to just change some parts of it to be easily pluggable, or like, can't, rewrite all those features that we already have. And yeah. So I guess we'd have to look at this like on a per feature basis, I guess. Like, incidents have like titles and descriptions. What does it take to get the existing titles and description feature on an incident? Do we have to, rewrite this, change this, or?
I know for incidents, we definitely want to reduce the activity on the sidebar. So there is a push from our side to reduce some of the things that we don't need, like due dates or waits. So that is probably similar priority as adding those new widgets that are specific to incidents as well.
Yeah, but if you start with a new model like incidents, because I think this would be on a separate page, right? Not on the issues page. And so you start with an incident model and you just bring in the notable model so that it can have notes, and then put in the notes view component, change some stuff maybe just to make it work with incidents. And then, yeah, you have something with notes without the sidebar and all that. And yeah, it's not super easy to integrate the notes in because, right now, but yeah, I think it's workable.
Well, I think that's what we're looking at. Like, do we have to create a new model, or can we just add a type, is a thing? Like, what if we get to the point where we want to merge Epics back in with issuables and just have an issuables and then have a type field, right? So that way, like, because we're going to want in the future, part of this isn't just for incidents. Incidents is the first use case, but we're going to want to have different issuable types like bugs, right? And a bug might have different fields on it. We're going to want to have like user stories, and that might have different fields on it. We're going to allow the end user, we want the end user to be able to customize what issue types that they have, and then configure what fields they have on that issue type based on what they need. So I think that's where there's like the immediate, what can we do to get incidents up and running? But then there's also, can we like work towards the longer term vision iteratively, but like saying, this is where we want to be in 6 months, is have these like flexible issue types. And then at some point maybe be viewable in the same lists, right? I think for this MVC, we see that incidents are just going to be in the incidents area, but like we could have that show up somewhere else if we ever wanted to, like with other issues, and be able to do like work stream management on the different types of issues or value stream reporting on, like, well, what sort of instance is your throughput, what sort of features, what sort of defects. It's like sort of what we use labels for right now to specify all of these different issue types, but wanting to like have first class data for it, and also a way to customize or enable the end user to customize what fields are on which types based on how they work.
Yeah, I think that's also part of my confusion with like issue types. Are they like, you know, like merge request? It's kind of weird to be an issue type. It's not really an issue, or like, or, you know, it's like,
I think that's where we've had this conversation, and issues as they stand right now are confusing to people to begin with, right? Because you can have an issue that's a bug. You can have an issue. There's like, I talk to customers like, well, GitLab can't do defect management. I'm like, yes, you can. You can use issues. Well, what's an issue? I'm like, well, it's anything, right? It's like that kind of conversation is not like super helpful, because you can use an issue for a lot of different things. And I think that's where we started step back and said, like, at the very bottom, like an issuable, if you were going to make an issuable completely composable with widgets and everything else from the ground up, the only thing that would be required would be a title and notes, right? You're always going to have a discussion on something that's an issuable, because at some point, like, you need to collaborate on it. Different issues to solve different jobs to be done, right? So you have your incidents, you have your, I'm going to develop a feature, you have your, this is a bug that somebody reported that we need to track, you have your, here's a security issue that we need to solve for, you have, here's your technical debt that needs to be refactored. And each of those I can see in the future having slightly different data that you want to collect with them to support the job to be done, right? So a good example is the Zoom room, like on, or the links in the sidebar of the incidents. We would also, I can see value in having links on feature requests that links to the Salesforce, you know, and it's like an array of links that all link to Salesforce customers, or for a bug, a link to the Zendesk thing, instead of it just being dropped into a note, like you can have that in the link section or something like that. But I think that's where that is the difference. Like, it's almost, I'd almost like to see issues become a thing that's in the background, and then the first class thing in the UI is the jobs to be done that people want to use issuables for, which would be merging code into a repo, fixing a bug, building a feature, resolving an incident, all those sorts of things, if that makes sense.
yeah, one option to do this is, which isn't going to be too hard also, is to like add like a type column to the issues table right now. And then, but we'd have to change the issues list right now to like exclude these incident types, right? Just to keep things the same. And then on the incidents page, it's basically a filter, you know, you use the same issues finder and find the issues that have the type incident. And then on the front end, you could already render this differently anyway, without the sidebar or with a simplified sidebar, or, you know. So I think that if we want to go that way, where they're like the same thing, an issue, and then, yeah, so it's also possible without having to do a lot of work making it like very customizable in the future. And you know, it still would have the same columns in the database, like assignee ID and all that, but because the front end is you know, handled differently, it's on a separate page right now, they could just skip the rendering of the sidebar and all the unrelated fields that they need.
So, I mean, I guess, and this is, I'm still very new to it, and I've only looked at the issuable model once, but it seems like a lot of what we want from kind of extensible issues as a concept already exists in the modeling. I guess, like, Gabe, is the pain like mostly coming, is the what you recounted from epics, like how, I guess, like painful the process around creating epics was and managing those has been, is that where a lot of the like historical context comes from, or like, yeah.
Which kind of historical context? There's that, yeah, sorry, which kind of historical context?
Right, so I mean, I think there's like kind of a handful of different things being talked about here. There's kind of like one, just like incident management's needs, which are sort of like driving the urgency around this. There's broader like issue types, is sort of different, you know, different types of database records that render different things. And then there's extensible issues, which is sort of like a base level issue class that then you can add widgets to. I guess I'm confused by how we don't already have sort of extensible issues, given that we have like an issuable base class that can then be extended. Is it just because it's extensible in the code sense, but not in like the user sense? Like it's not a user configurable kind of like full stack configuration?
I think it's both. And I also think because the more models that we add, the more that you have to maintain across different things, right? And then the more like, as we work in isolated groups, the less we collaborate across the models and across things. And then the more things diverge, and then you have overlapping solutions in a lot of ways, right? So like a good example would be with incidents where they want to have the related to, they want to relate other incidents, other alerts to a given incident. And then they also want to relate merge requests and do all these other things. And then if you create a different model, then naturally the team will, over time, unless there is like some sort of framework or like bigger thing that they're working within, will diverge and like optimize the solutions for that one given thing. But a lot of times that then results in fragmentation across both the user experience and the data model, I think, right? So like, a good example is like, we need to, like, incidents don't need designs on them, like the design manager, but epics do, right? So like, as we like come across these different issuable types, we're having to, instead of it already being available, we're having to go and do a bunch of work to get it to work there. And I think that's what users want to be able to do in the long run is say, I have an issue and I want this to be a bug. I have an issue that I want this to be a feature, and they're going to go through two separate workflows. I want to track them and report on them within my value stream, but they need to have separate completion steps, right? So the type determines how the work gets done, what data is required on the thing. But a lot of the times, like, these will share the same data. So I think it's a front end problem. It also, like, if we want to allow users to be able to configure it in the long run, then it becomes a back end heavy problem of what does the modeling look like, right?
Right.
Because we can't compose all of these things or allow the end user to compose all of these things the way that it works in the current backend.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, the other risk I see with like adding a type column, you know, I think it's a good idea, right? I mean, adding a type column, and then eventually this could become like the main, you know, table, main model, and then everything just contains extra things. But I think the main risk here is like, we have to go through all the issues code that we have or things and add like filters to exclude incidents, right? For, you know, so that incidents don't unintentionally get, you know, listed somewhere, or, you know, permissions checks would be different, I guess, if, you know, incidents have like different permissions. And, you know, so yeah, there are things that we have to go through in existing code to make sure there are no weird things, you know, showing up. And like the IIDs wouldn't be sequential anymore. I guess it's fine, it's minor, but yeah.
And sorry, Clement, I just saw you notice that Peter wasn't included. I totally missed him on the invite. And
No worries. We got it recorded, so I think that will help.
yeah. Okay, well, we're short on time, and I recognize this is like a longer conversation for this. It's just really difficult to find time with this group, but we can take it async after this. Are y'all trying to, on the monitor side, are you trying to kind of like have incidents as a, you know, as a thing shipped in 13.3? Is that the current timing?
We want to start working on what this feature looks like in 13.3.
Okay.
Today, our incidents are issues with the label incident on it.
Right.
And anything we can get closer to moving towards our vision is great, because we're trying to get the infrastructure team to use it too, and there's a lot of noise that we'd like to streamline and features we want to add.
Right. Well, I mean, I think, you know, it's difficult to talk about like kind of timeline for what we're going to do without knowing what we're going to do.
Yeah, creating a separate model will be the easiest way forward, but it's not like if we intend to do it like the long-term plan of like having one like issue type and then everything else extending from it, then it wouldn't like help with that goal. But we also have to consider how easy or hard it is to migrate back from, you know, these incident models to these issue types if we ever, you know, so it's like that basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm mostly just like thinking about this, the scope of the extensible issues epic and the kind of issue types within that is pretty large, and it seems like we should just define a path forward towards what incidents needs. And maybe that just means making the current kind of like pluggable things on the issuable, like within the issuable concern, just making those easier to plug into new models, like taking the first step towards that so that they're actually like pluggable from a kind of a backend standpoint. Yeah, I'm not really sure what the right path forward is. Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I've got to jump off for a one-on-one, but there's a handful of open questions on the technical implementation for extensible issues. It might also be worthwhile, and I don't know if this already exists, but having I'm sure there's documentation on this somewhere of like what the MVC for incidents is. So that we can kind of cross-reference between like, okay, we have extensible issues as a broad concept. We know we need to enable incidents, and then kind of get to the path of like, what's the path forward MVC for that?
So one idea is like taking it super small. So first MVC is how do you create an incident without having to use the label incident, right? Next step. So if you get rid of that label and you can have all your incidents still show up in the incidents report, the next step is how do you remove the one field that incidents don't need, but still want it to be accessible. So like start thinking in like field level, subtract this, add this, right? And you could approach it in literally that's granular of like an iterative approach, which might help tease out the optimal way to do it. I don't know, but that's almost like how I would approach things, right? For me.
Yeah, I think it makes sense just to, you know, just make it a different type and then just show up with all these things for now, without the label because we don't need it. But yeah, like I said, the main risk would be because we add it as a type to issues, it affects all the code that relates to issues right now. Maybe like referencing issues, you know, how we query issues that we reference and all that. If we have the hashtag, then the issue ID, right? So we'd have to change that code to say like, if the hashtag and the ID is a type incident, it shouldn't turn into a link or something, you know, we have to do those things. So there are a lot of work that needs to be changed with our current stuff, I think, if we, you know.
Would we have to do that anyways if we add like different types as first class things like defect, you know?
Yeah, we would, but I'm just saying that we don't have to do it now. If we want to do it now, then it kind of blocks the monitor's work. So
Okay, well, I've got to hop off. But yeah, let's discuss this in Slack and on the issue, and then we'll try to follow up. And I know we're in like officially in 13.2 now, so that was part of the kind of like eagerness to get this scheduled and at least kick off the conversation. But it's a lot to talk about, and certainly more than 30 minutes of 5 people. So yeah, we'll follow up offline. I'll try to get this recording up. I may bug somebody for help on like how exactly to do that. But yeah, thanks everybody. Appreciate it, and we'll follow up soon.